Good morning, noon, and evening to any of our listeners. Hope everyone is doing well today, and welcome back to Children of the Corn. We'll be continuing where we left off last time to follow the story surrounding Hendrik Cornelius' heroic status. There have been quite some developments since then. Me and Marie have done some researching, and several listeners also provided us with some tips. I asked my family, and they got into contact with an old British agent who served with my grandfather for some missions. After some explaining, he offered to give us the parts of his mission reports, but only if we were really sure he wanted to have them. We were puzzled at first, but the reports were rather grim. In addition, Marie managed to find some information in her great-grandmother's diary.
Yes, that's right. We managed to find a couple of pages on which she wrote about her experiences. We have seen some entries which describe her being in hiding and the confusing situation it must have been. It does have some mentions of your grandfather also. Thanks to her diary, we know that Hendrik was extremely calculating and was able to block his consciousness when doing morally questionable stuff. My great-grandmother's diary describes him as such a tall, cold, and calculating individual. I asked my brother to record the diary, so he can play some of that now.
November 30th, 1943. Anyway, in the middle of the night there was a soft knock on the door, and before we knew it, the big scary man came in. I've never seen him before, but he had a massive scar on his cheek. I was afraid of him and pretended to be asleep, so he would not notice me. January 2nd, 1944. Speaking of bad people, the guy with the scar came back to check again. He's here once every few weeks or so. I don't keep count. I learned that he's called Hendrik, and he's weird. When the others talk to him, he seems to think about something else entirely, never focusing on what they are saying, as if he's planning something in his head. Is he? Who is he? And what is he doing here?
So he was helping them, warned them, and then he betrayed them?
Well, we aren't sure at the moment, but we do know that Hendrik was involved in the Gestapo raid, which eventually found my family and others. It wasn't even just an informant in plain clothes. He showed up in an official police uniform.
We all got a big scare last night. The door opened and a man in a sort of police uniform stood in front of us. Luckily we realized after a few moments that it was just Hendrik, but he really scared us. Dad asked him why he was wearing the uniform, but Hendrik told him to shut up. That it was part of the job to be involved with important people, in order to spy on them, and that they should not be asking questions. May 29th, 1944. Hendrik came back again. He looked really sad, as if there was something he was dealing with. He just was very quiet instead of his normal commanding voice, but he would not tell us what was going on. When Dad asked him about how Yakira was doing, he stated that she was fine and hard at work. August 11th, 1952. We were in the attic for over a year, until that fatal night. The door flew open, and 12 men with machine guns came in. The Germans had found us. It was one big chaos as they were arresting us, shouting and crying over each other. I remember being scared. I remember trying to hold my mother's hand, but it took me away from her. And I remember him, Hendrik, standing there in a police uniform, looking as the scene unfolded, not sad or angry, calculating, indifferent to what he saw. I thought at that moment I was right to have hated him, though I would not learn the truth of what happened much later.
But we don't know what really happened in between these events, or what motivated Hendrik to become a turncoat.
Wow. That's what's still so confusing to me. I don't understand why his behavior and loyalty is so strange and inconsistent. He seems to be like a double agent, but on both sides. Was he doing these things to get close to a larger goal, or was he just doing this because he was forced to do it out of survival?
I know, right? I can understand the intentions of trying to mix in with the enemy, but this kind of behavior in combination with the suit is just super suspicious. And also considering the last entries in the diary, which suggest he was involved in something horrible. But he did show remorse.
Hendrik never told Jacotina why he betrayed us, but when he died in Indonesia in the spring of 1948, she went through his files of the war. On the day we were arrested, he had made a note in his journal. It read, "Forgive me, God, for I did it for her."
So what is that about?
I don't know, but there is a suggestion that it might be about Yakira Aliza. We think Hendrik was more than friends with her.
Then I saw the big scary man walk towards Shakira. I've not spoken to her yet, and not going to now. I saw her holding his hand and talking quietly for a long time. And when he's done talking to the other adults, he and Shakira go to their bed, close the curtains, and then make some weird noises that Dad does not want us to hear, so we have to cover our ears. And then he leaves without saying a word. April 3rd, 1944. Shakira here. Hendrik, meanwhile, has been amazing. Keeps me up to date with as much as he can tell me. Visits me whenever he can. He promised me that as soon as the war is over, he'd marry me and we would travel around the world. See all the things we missed. I can only dream of that day. Until then, keep being strong. Weird to read how Shakira writes about Hendrik, because to me, he's still a jerk. I guess that's the way it is. Maybe he will talk to me one day in a normal tone. Perhaps then I will talk to him.
I feel like this situation is far more complicated than I would first have imagined, particularly taking this part at the end.
Shakira died in Amsterdam, starved to death, which saddens me. I remember I liked her when she was in the attic. I also learned why she left. She was not Jewish like the rest of us, not special as Dad would have said. She was a member of the resistance who just had to lay low for a while. Then, when the time came, Hendrik took her away again.
So it seems that he did love her. But because she died, he eventually married Jacotina. My great-grandmother mentioned that she was friends with Shakira and that Hendrik married her out of duty for the woman that he loved.
But it still does not explain why he betrayed them. What's the connection with Shakira here, if there is any?
You mean the forgive me God for what I did, for I did it for her?
Yes. Maybe we need more information on Shakira. What she was doing in the war. Maybe she had to save her or something.
You mean choose between her and my family?
Could be, but we don't know. What we do know is she was involved in the chemical plant sabotage. But as a member of the resistance, she could have been in danger.
That is why she had to lay low in the first place.
Yes, and we know that during that mission of the chemical plant, my grandfather was forced to make some pretty messed up decisions. All for the good of the mission.
What kind of things?
The report says he paid a local woman to seduce a German soldier and bring him to a field where he was held captive and interrogated him in order to get to the chemical plant.
But did he manage to get into the plant then?
He did, but the report said that Hendrik tortured him beforehand, pulling out his fingernails. And after the torture, Hendrik just shot him with a pistol and a pillow to muffle the sound.
Oh my God. Why? He just shot him in cold blood as a half-naked prisoner.
I know, but the weird thing is I can sort of understand why. And the report explains his rationalization. Just hear me out, please. If they let the soldier go, he might have warned the chemical plant. He might have kept quiet for a moment, but after the sabotage mission, he would have been questioned by his superiors. The questioning would have resulted in him talking about the girl and about the farmer's field, getting them both killed. And this proof of collaboration with the enemy might have resulted in the Germans retaliating for this attack and might have just slaughtered the town out of spite. If there is no evidence linking the village to the attack, then there's no reason to be hostile to the village.
I can sort of see his point of view. He's trying to look at the situation in the long run, how it might have unforeseen consequences and things to take into account. I'm not sure how that justifies what he did, but I understand that the circumstances didn't allow for a lot of compassion during a mad war. I guess the mission report also confirms things we found in the diary.
I saw something which really scared me. Apparently Hendrik had to steal some food coupons for us, in order to not starve. But when he did, he was caught by a German soldier, and then shot him dead. It was horrible. How could you do that? That man was just doing his work. Does he not have a family? Or friends who will now miss him? January 9th, 1944. I guess the soldier is dead. Not because I've been told that, but Hendrik was suspicious of everything when he came in. I mean more than usual. He always had this thing around him of mistrusting everyone. Seeing traitors everywhere. I know he provides for us, but I'm starting to think that in another world, he might be the bad guy. Why is he doing this? For us? Because it's right? Or does he want to be seen as a cool guy? I heard Dad say that Hendrik is the kind of guy who wants to lurk around famous and interesting people. That seems fitting.
Yeah, he's gone from a hero to a anti-hero in our household and family. We don't really see him as evil or bad, but we want to admit to the truth of his actions and that the good should be appreciated, but that also that the bad should be condemned. But his mentality is sickening. From what I've been hearing, he must have had very little regrets, since it seems he only cared to do what had to be done. For the right reasons, of course.
It reminds me of discussions around the World War II debates, such as the bombing of Dresden, and whether it was a war crime. Was it justified that the US dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan?
Yeah, doing a little evil for the greater good. I hope my grandfather at least thought what he was doing was the right thing.
Something like that. And for the record, we also found some entries in which Hendrik seems to regret the raid. It must have had a pretty heavy weight on his shoulders. So maybe your grandfather thought that what he was doing, that it would protect him and his family, and seemed to have regrets later on.
Thanks. That strangely helps. Hearing that he was sorry or regretful does humanize him more. And it's always better to look stupid than to actually be evil. This has been quite a roller coaster.
Yeah, this is quite a lot to digest at once. And we still might not have the entire picture of what really went on. That's why we're still combing through family stuff to find out more information.
Very true. And we will continue to search for any data that can help us shed light on the matter. And if any of you listeners happen to know what happened with these events, or if you know people who might be able to help us, please let us know. Contact us, and we'll be able to get to the bottom of this. This is all our time for today's podcast. I'm Hildebrandt.
And I'm Marie.
And thank you for watching Children of the Corn.